told me a story about a Bigfoot that happened in, I believe he said it was around 1902, 1903 is the first one he told me about. Don't quote me on that because, I'm not, that was, 6 or 7 years old. So my Uncle JR and my papa and his family and stuff used to log hardwoods and softwoods like pine and cane oak and red oak and stuff like that out of the thick in East Texas. And my Uncle JR, from running out of the woods, from what my papa was telling me, that he's screaming and yelling, and it's white as a ghost. And he grabbed my papa off the clearing where they were at. This man was back in there by himself, half mile in the woods. And when he got to my papa, he said, don't ever go in the woods without a gun. And I'm not talking a pea shooter, I'm talking, bigger than 12 gauge. Because what I've seen, there's nothing back in there. There's no reason why it should be there. So my papa tells me the story. He says the man comes running out of the woods, his wife and ghost. They're trying to get him to calm down, and he's like, run, run, run. And my papa sets him down next to the wagon train where they were at. They had 13 hand high mules, and they used these mules to pull the logs out of the woods, and they had a wagon that had all their tools and stuff like that. And he sets him down next to the wheel, next to the wagon, and this man is just drenched in sweat and bleached of all color. And he's telling, I'm sorry, let me correct that. It wasn't my pawpaw that was there, it was my pawpaw's dad. So it was my great grandpa, and then his Uncle JR, I believe. And my pawpaw's dad had questioned this man as to what was going on. He said, I seen something that was a monster, myth or whatever, and he goes, this thing was huge. It was, 10 foot plus or, whatever. He's flipping out, screaming at these guys and stuff to get out of there. And he tells him, he says, you can't go in the woods without a gun. And you need something bigger than a 12 gauge because these things are monsters, are massive. I don't believe anything less than a 12 gauge would hurt him. He said that he was cutting a tree down back there, or marking it or something like that. And this thing peered around a bush. He had been looking in that direction for about 20 minutes because he kept hearing something. And as I can recall, he kept hearing like a chirp. But it wasn't a bird. He said it was, sounded like something making a bird noise, like a human. Because it was obviously too big to be a bird. And all of a sudden he seen something pop its head around the bush. And he looked over and it was like, the heck is that? And he's got, all this stuff on him, his backpack and all that stuff, or whatever it is he had with him. And he said this thing popped its head around and then it just stood up. And he said that he just kept looking as it was standing up. And it seemed like it took forever for it to fully go erect. And he said that's when he just froze in fear. And this thing just stared at him like, there's food, And that's how he felt. Like he was on the dinner menu. And he took off running after the thing turned its back and walked away. He felt safe enough to, hightail it out of there. He gets to the clearing where my papa's dad is and his other brothers and stuff like that. And that's when, he describes to them what he's seen and stuff like that. And after they get him to calm down and stuff, this man never went back in the woods. I mean, he moved out of that town. And back then, there was really nowhere to find work at. So, he had to wind up coming back. But he moved into the larger city that's next to the town where this happened at. And he never had another experience because he wouldn't go back to the woods. So my papa told me that story. And then the next one was that I was told, my nanny and my papa both told me this story. This actually happened to them where they lived at. There were 3 houses. In the front by the road was my great aunt's house, and then it was my nanny and papa's house in the middle, and then the back by the barn was my great grandmother's house. And in between all these houses, there was a well. It was, oh heck, I don't know, probably 50, 60 yards out from my nanny and papa's house. And every morning, my papa would come out there to get water, and the bucket would be right side up, half full of water. Well, at night they would shut the well door, and then they would flip the bucket upside down, so sediment, dust and stuff like that wouldn't fly in. And every morning for years, I can't recall exactly how many years, but for years, my papa said that he would see that bucket flip right side up on top of the well door. The well door was closed and it'd be half full of water. And he said that he didn't know exactly what it was that was doing then. And one day he figured it out. He said that it was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. He heard something outside. So he looked through the window and seen what he described as the tallest, hairiest bear he had ever seen. But it didn't make sense to him because there's no bears in that area. So he went out there the next morning because he wasn't about to go out there and see what it was face to face in the middle of the night. This is in the 1950s. There's no electric lights out there. There's no street lights. So you can't really see anything. And he's describing this as a silhouette. He's not describing it as, he's seen it and he can give you details off of it. Anyway, he went out there and there's footprints around the well this time because it had just rained. And they're embedded in the mud, and he said that they had to have been easily 15, 16 inches long and 8 to 10 inches across. But what struck him as strange was the fact that the footprint was embedded so far down in the soil. He said that whatever it was had to be a very heavy creature to step down on that soil and embed that print into the soil a good 2 inches. He said, one of my uncles, I don't recall his name, was out there and stepped next to it, and this man is, 6'2", 6'3", and every bit of 250 pounds, and he could only get it to go down about a half inch.
Treat yourself to a culinary delight at the Wild Rose, South Jordan's premier fine dining destination in the district shopping center. Indulge in the contemporary American dishes featuring the finest cuts of meat and freshness of fish, enhanced by unique, classically inspired sauces. Relax with a craft beer, specialty cocktail, or a selection from our extensive wine list. Private dining rooms and pleasures of our taste. The Wild Rose is perfect for any occasion. The Wild Rose, fine dining out west.
all across his chest as he slept without a shirt, without anything on. Actually, he was, butt naked. He said he felt something hairy going across his chest, so he just figured it was the cat. And all of a sudden, he wakes up, and there's this big creature, like literally inside of the house, reaching over Bill's dad. I recall right, his name is, I want to say it's Arcee. Anyway, he's seen this thing reaching over to grab the baby, and that's when it started. There was a tussle. This man was actually fighting this thing. I don't know how that turned out. I mean, obviously it wasn't able to, hurt the man or anything like that to the point where he passed away, but he tussled with this thing, and he had, I guess, got to his shotgun somehow, or the mom got to the shotgun. They unloaded on it, and it just kind of grunted at him and ran out of the house. He said that this thing wasn't that tall. It was probably 6.5, 7 feet tall. And Arcee had some run-ins with these things before, so I figured, I'm shooting off. Well, he said that my Aunt Mert gave them some money and told them to move out of there because they like to take kids and kidnap them. God knows what they do with them, eat them or whatever. And she said that it wasn't safe for them to be there anymore because they have small children. When I was told that story, and I found it highly unbelievable. I mean, then I had 4 people in my family tell me the same exact story, almost identical to what I had to say. Whether I'm leaving out details or whatever, I don't know. It's been a while since I've heard that story. The next encounter that I was told about, my nanny and my papa lived in the middle house on that same property. And my Aunt Mert had a fruit cellar dug into the side of his hill. And every now and again, every so often, they would, come outside, the door would be open, and stuff would be missing out of it. And one night, my papa had noticed that the door was open, went out there and closed it, comes back into the house. He didn't think nothing of it. And they're all asleep and everything, and it's my mom is the oldest of the children, and then it's my Uncle Bubba, and then it's my Uncle Bob, my Uncle Larry, my Uncle Joe, and my Aunt Christy. I believe they only had the 3 oldest at the time, which was my mom, Uncle Bubba, and Uncle Bob, and they were all sleeping in one room. Because obviously, it's another one shack type of thing. But they were all sleeping in one room. And the house is kind of built on a slope. So the front of the house was on a pillar system. And it's, probably about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. And then it gets to that porch, it's a good 8 feet off of the ground. So the room that they're all sleeping in is in the middle of the house. I'm guessing, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 feet off of the ground with a silver. And the window is at the base of the window, probably at 8 feet. Well, they had just planted a flower bed right there on that side of the house. And my mom woke up to my Uncle Bubba and my Uncle Bob screaming that something was lurking in the window. And she, woke up my nanny and my papa. My papa looked at it and seen it because it took a bit. And they had this really aggressive dog chain out in front. And my mom said what woke up my Uncle Bubba and my Uncle Bob was the dog going on, yanking at the chain and growling. It wasn't barking, it was just growling, as if he's seen a mountain lion or something. And that woke them up. And then they turned to look outside, and they're face to face with this thing. And the face as if it was looking in at the angle to where it could see the kids. And my nanny and papa was on their left side of that window. So it didn't see them, was looking at the kids. And then that is it for that one. And then the next story I was told by my Uncle Larry and my Uncle Bubba, they were outside with Bill and Tyke, I believe. And Tyke was Bill's brother, who is, I want to say that their dad and mama's name is Arson this week. Anyway, they had railroad ties out there. They had been out there jumping up and down on one, trying to break it. I'm macho, I'm more macho than you, I can break this thing. They got dust. And by this time, they had put up hollows of light outside to where you could just see the thunder flying. And all of a sudden, where they had the light at it was right next to the edge of the wood line. And it was almost directly over that railroad tie that on top of it. It was teeter-totter. And they had something over one end of it so it wouldn't pop up, I guess. So they could try to get it stabilized to jump on it and break it. It had become dusk and it was at 6:30. It was already getting pretty dark. And this is towards the end of summer. And my Uncle Bubba and my Uncle Larry were the only two left out there. And my Uncle Bubba got tapped on the shoulder and then punched by my Uncle Larry because he wasn't paying attention. My Uncle Larry didn't say one word, he just pointed. And my Uncle Bubba and him described to me this long, hairy, muscular leg that would put a cow's leg, reached out and stomped on this railroad tie and just completely cut it in half or whatever. And then it just came back into the woods. They didn't see it. The next story is my Aunt Mert had prize cows and a prize bull, and my Uncle Chesley, and these are my great uncle and great aunt, were sitting in the house, and my Aunt Mert heard her bull going off in the field, bellowing. And he came out there. They had a barbed wire fence that was 4 rows. So you have 4-strand barbed wire fence, which is pretty high. It's probably about 4 feet or so. And this thing was out there. My Uncle Chesley told my papa that he seen the damn thing. He grabbed the shotgun from beside the door, and it had buckshot in it. And he was fairly close to it when he shot this thing. I guess this thing had broken his bull's neck, threw it over his shoulder. And then when he shot it, it didn't even make a sound. He just jumped over the fence and took off with a whole bull. How big the bull was, how old it was, I have no idea. My papa told me that story because my Uncle Chesley, I guess, had told him that story.
Treat yourself to a culinary delight at the Wild Rose, South Jordan's premier fine dining destination in the District Shopping Center. Indulge in our contemporary American dishes featuring the finest cuts of meat and freshest fish, inspired new classically inspired sauces. Relax with a flavorful specialty cocktail or a selection from our extensive wine list, like quiet dining rooms and craft music opportunities. The Wild Rose is perfect for any occasion. The Wild Rose, finally fine dining outlets. Just stop by. Also,
had all told me the story. This next one, they didn't tell me these stories all together. You hear about these things in stories where they grab something and twist the limb off of it. Well, going back to the first story that I told you guys about the mules that are 13 hands high, they had rather large horses as well, Clydesdales and stuff like that. And one of the horses they had was, I believe, an Appaloosa. I believe it was a speckled Appaloosa. And it was in the barn. And my mom said that her and my Uncle Bob and my Uncle Bob went down to the well to get water. And the barn's not too far off from the well, 60 yards or so. And they heard the horse in there neigh. And then they heard it kick the side of the stable, inside the barn. And they went in there and the door was, popped open. It's unusual because they always close the door when it starts getting dusk for horses. Because there are, mountain lions and stuff like that in there. And my mom said she peeked in the window, like through the door, sorry, not window, through the door of the barn. And she seen this thing that was just big and hairy. I mean, a massive creature, she said. Kind of like the thing that was looking through the window, she said. Grabbed his horse by the back leg and twist it and yank it off his horse. And she watched it happen. And then she said she looked up and another one was jumping down from the hayloft onto the ground and it shook the whole ground, she said. And her and my Uncle Bubba and my Uncle Bob all ran back to my nanny and Papa's house screaming, which in turn had my Uncle Chesley and my Papa and all them come out of the house. And this is probably in the 1970s. They had already moved back from Abilene, Texas. And they all come running out of the house and they have shotguns and stuff. And my Papa told me that he seen one run out of the front and he didn't see another one. And my mom and my Uncle Bubba and my Uncle Bob had all said that there was two of them in there. Well, my Papa and my Uncle Chesley went up to the door to look and see if there was another one in there, and there wasn't. I guess it had already ran out or something. But the horse was laying over there and it was missing both of its back legs and its neck had twisted to where its head was all the way around facing its rear end. And they had just gotten that horse. It was rather expensive. It was, for my Aunt Mert's, I guess she wanted to show it or something. And all they found leading out of the barn was footprints because it had been raining or whatever and the ground was saturated. That were leading into the thicket to the left side of the barn, and they seen branches that were snapped. Whatever it was that was running through there, it was, tall enough to break 3-inch branches 8 feet up into the tree. These are all pine and stuff like that, so anybody that knows anything about, green pine, that stuff doesn't snap. It's like a twist rope, essentially. Now, keep in mind, when I was growing up, I wasn't living in the same town that they were living in. We were living in the city next to that town. It's 17, 18 miles away from there. And at the time when I was being told these stories, it was the county, it wasn't the city yet. And they had a nice house on roughly about 2 acres of property. Anyway, it never really dawned on me that these things could exist. I always just kind of believed that they were fake or whatever. These people were drinking too much moonshine type of thing. So I had gone fishing my whole life out in that area where they were talking about. There's this creek down there called Little Cypress, and me and my papa used to go fishing there all the time, overnight a lot of the time. And he would tell me these stories and stuff. Him and his good buddy WL, I want to believe is his name, we were at that creek where we were at another creek, and they told me a story about them being there late at night, and both of them were kind of drinking some beer and stuff, whatnot, and they're fishing and all that good stuff. My papa tells me he gets up to go check the live line where they have a catfish at. It's hanging off the bank into the water. It's tied to a branch or whatever. He's checking it. His water moccasins like come up and bite the fish and try to get them off the line and eat them and stuff like that. He checks the fish are fine. On his way back, he hears to him what sounds like an oversized ape yelling in the woods. He said it sounded like an oversized ape. His exact description of that was like, oh. So he gets back to the campfire. He's talking to WL about what was that sound, and WL's like, oh, I have no idea, man. Like, that's kind of weird. So they don't hear anything for a while. But if anybody's ever been in the thick woods and they've been in there far enough, sound reverberates and echoes and bounces off those trees and stuff. Something can be 2 feet in front of you and sound like it's a mile away, or be a mile away and sound like it's 2 feet in front of you. Anyway, they're like, oh, it sounded pretty far off, but you can be closer or whatever. They both, latch a hold of their firearms while they're sitting there by the fire. They got their lines out in the water and stuff too, and they're not too far away from them. Sitting there drinking or whatever. I guess they just gave up on the point of actually fishing or whatever. And all of a sudden, a good 10-15 minutes after that sound, 20 minutes after it sound, something like that, my papa said that they heard another sound like I guess it's called like samurai chatter. They didn't know what it was back then. This is heck in the early 70s, late 60s, somewhere in that area. They said they heard that, and it sounded like it was coming from behind a couple of tree rows from where they were at. Like, it was a good, 10, 15, 20 feet into the tree line from where they were at, the clearing. And this isn't, you're not just making a right and turning left immediately. You're traveling 20, 30 minutes from the highway to get to your favorite fish hole. Is you take an old dirt road, you get out of the truck, you walk a path for, I'd probably say he said about 100 feet, and it comes to a round clearing, and it's right off the bank of the river. Anyway, they're sitting there and they hear the samurai chatter, and they've never heard anything like that. And they're sitting there talking about it. They're like, man, we should just pack up and get on out here. And then all of a sudden, not even seconds after that samurai chatter, they said they heard something that sounded like a steam locomotive running through the woods. And they could hear trees and branches being broken and stuff like that. And I do believe that they put all of their stuff there and just hightailed it out of there. That's what he said had happened. WL on that is, he told me the same story, same exact story, except for he told me something my papa didn't, one thing off of the drive, and he said that this thing's eyeballs lit up. Like, he said it reminded him of the old lanterns that the coal miners used. Those rectangular tin lanterns that have a candle inside of them, the glass lantern. And he said it reminded him of that.
Let me ask you something. Do your feet hurt after a day on the slopes? Well, they shouldn't. Just stop by the Eagle Salt Lake City. It's going to help take it apart. discount. Exclusions apply.
And that's the only thing he had seen. And the whole time, they hadn't smelled anything, nothing like that. I didn't hear anything about smell about these things until later on. So they hightailed it down there. They jumped back in the truck after they get down the trail and get out of there. And my papa gets home and is, telling my nanny about the things that were happening and stuff. And she was asking me, I thought you would be gone overnight type of thing. And it's probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night when the show started to come out. And he recounts this story to her. And she says, man, it's those things that we dealt with down below. You know exactly what to call them, because there wasn't really a name for it other than men and boys with their So, the next story I was told by my papa, he said, this is small town thinking for you if you want to kind of get a grasp on why this came out the way. My papa told me that there was Quakers that had traveled down through there, and there wasn't. Old wagon trail back behind their property where they used to live at in that small town. He said he thinks that, they got lost back in there in the 1700s and, they turned into these big hairy things, not understanding that, these things have probably been there since before people ever arrived here. The Native Americans have been dealing with them, I guess, this whole time. Anyway, he said that he thinks that they were Quakers and they turned into these big hairy wild men. Is another one that he like how he said wild man.
And they got lost back in there or whatever. They turned into the wild man. And he said that he took that trail one day just to kind of see where it led to. He was early in his 20s. He had already met my nanny. He was 21, 22. She was 14, 15 years old. And maybe she was older. I don't remember. Heck. He took this trail back down into the woods, and the creek that I was talking about, Little Cypress, actually runs through the property that my family used to own. It runs back, way back into the distance, and then it goes on forever. So he had taken that trail back off in there, and he had just dead ended in the woods. I mean, he couldn't really follow it any further. And he had told my Uncle Larry and my Uncle Bob about this trail and stuff like that. So they were pretty well determined to, I guess, jump on some horses and go riding through there to go look and see if they can't find the end of this trail. They got on their horses and whatnot, and they went back down off into the woods where this wagon trail had led into. Whether it was a highly used area or not, I don't know. I don't know how they knew that wagon trail was there or whatever, unless it was passed down for generations about where it was at. But my Uncle Bob and my Uncle Larry had taken this trail. They followed the wagon trail. They went down into the woods, and they rode for about an hour or so, and they started smelling something really funny. It smelled like, dead animals and stuff like that. And they come upon a mound that's in the middle of the woods. And when I say it's thick in there, I mean there's vines that creep off of the trees that have thorns on them. These vines are like cable, and the thorns are rock hard, and they're a good half-inch long, quarter-inch long. So, they get off the horses because it's real thick right there, and there's an obvious opening like a game trail that they can go through. And the horses are spooked anyway. They don't want to go any further. They're flipping out. They're throwing their front hooves up and stuff like that. So they tie them off to the tree, and they walk down in there. And my Uncle Larry, I never got a story about this out of my Uncle Bob. He wouldn't talk about it. My Uncle Larry said that they came upon this mound, and the mound had a huge hole dug into it. And just to the right of the mound, there was a pile, I want to say he said it was like a compost pile almost, but he could see bones sticking out of it. He didn't know what kind of bones they were. He never went into too much detail about it, but he said that's where the smell was coming from. There was flies all over it, some maggots and stuff like that. But there was a pile about, I want to say he said about 2 to 3 feet high, and it was probably a good 5 to 6 feet in diameter. And it was just, rotting material. And he said it was, possible deer carcasses and stuff like that right there. Anyway, they heard something moan out of the cave, and they hightailed it out of there. They ran and jumped on the horses, and the horses, when they took off, threw my Uncle Larry off, and my Uncle Larry had to actually run. It was either my Uncle Larry or my Uncle Bob. They had to run. One of them had to run to catch up to the horse, which the other one had already grabbed the reins of it, and they jumped on and took off again, or whatever happened with that. But he said that he believes that that's a Bigfoot cave, and he believes that they take whatever they're eating and they stuff it in that pile to let it kind of decay a little bit so they can pull the meat off the bones. I don't know how true that is. I have no idea. I'm not an expert on these things. I doubt anybody really actually is. But I want to say the next story dates back to the early 1800s, mid 1800s. I don't remember exactly how the story was told. I was young. My papa told me a story about some city folks that had came down in there, And people go missing in these woods all the time. You know, they think they know what they're doing. They go down there to go fishing and stuff like that, and they pop up missing. Anyway, there was some city folk that came in from a larger town in the area, and they had came down in there to look at land, I guess, possible prospect of buying or purchasing property. And their wagon was found on the side of what would be the main highway, like 154 or something like that. I don't know if it was called that back then or not, but it was found on the side of the highway. The horses were gone. They weren't even attached to the wagon anymore. The wagon was kind of slung sideways and had hit a tree. The people that were on there, on the wagon, I guess it was a man and his brother or something like that. A man and his wife, I don't remember exactly. But one of them had been yanked off of the wagon. The one that would be in the passenger seat on the right-hand side of the wagon had been yanked off of the wagon and dragged into the woods. And it's early morning hours. It's just breaking dawn when this had happened. And the driver said that he doesn't understand what happened. He was yanked off of the wagon too, but somehow he got away. He never seen what it was that had done it or whatever. But the passenger had never been seen again. And the driver was explaining this to, I want to say it was my great uncle or something like that, who, you know, found the wagon or whatever, and the driver on the side of the road just kind of dazed out of his head. And the driver had explained to him later on that there was two of us on that wagon. I don't know where the passenger went. Something happened. I heard the passenger screaming and yelling, and then I look up and there's just silhouettes. That's all I could see was just silhouettes and the oncoming light, the rise of the sun and stuff. And that's as far as that story got with me.
What you're hearing is Hardie Fiber Cement Siding living up to its reputation as the siding that handles hail impact. James Hardie knows what important the reputation is, especially in the contract. That's why Hardie Siding and Stainless Steel are better than vinyl siding, with styles to match the strength, so you can be sure you're providing your clients with the best. Protect your reputation with exterior products like James Hardie.
Whether my family ever did that or not, I don't know, but they said that, you know, you have to set out knocking for these things, because if you don't, they'll come and terrorize you. And when they say terrorize, they mean to kill livestock and stuff like that, too, because you should have fed them a portion of that crop because you're in that territory, you're on your own. And they told stories about some of them are really aggressive and really mean. They will actually hunt your kids and stuff, and that's where that your kids are not safe around these things, women are not safe around these things, and they'll kill men, but they don't necessarily drag them off. They want the women and children. And the story goes that some of them are really aggressive and they like to kidnap children and eat children because they're soft. You don't have to wait to eat them if you just eat. Women, I guess they want to make the film or anything or whatever. And there are some that, help kids out, that help people out. They're not aggressive. They're very passive. With that said, the next story comes out. Bill's wife, when she was young, used to walk through the woods to the bus stop. And she would always have interactions with these things, and they were never aggressive. They were always really passive with them. She said for the first couple of months it scared her really bad, because she's getting up at 5 a.m. and she's walking to the bus stop by 5:30 after she gets ready to go to school. And it's still dark outside. She's walking down the trail, and she can hear them to the right and the left. Sorry, I'm trying to recall this when this was told. She can hear them walking from the right to the left, and it's the right and left side of her. Sorry. Anyway, she would hear little chirps and mumbles and a giggle, she said it was. But she would walk to the bus stop. She had to go through this trail. This trail was, she said, roughly a 5 to 10 minute walk. She's not very good at the distance. To go from her house to the bus stop. And it was quicker to take the trail to walk all the way down the driveway and then get out to the road. And the bus stop was in front of the trail rather than being in front of the driveway. So, she's walking down that way and whatever. She leaves her backpack on the porch of her house. One day, she walks down the trail, she gets to the bus stop, and all of a sudden her backpack is at the bus stop when she shows up on it. And she had just been thinking about it because she had left it there. And she was wondering how that got there. So I assumed that, one of these things had grabbed this backpack and taken it down the trail and dropped it off right there at the end of the trail. She said that she had several experiences with these things. She said she never actually really saw one, but she heard them and she, could see, silhouettes or whatever. And one of her I think she only told me 2 stories of these things. The next one is of her. I believe that she told me that she was talking to one through her cracked window, like it was chirping like a sparrow, and she was doing the whistle and the noise back to it. And she said that it would mimic like the yip of a dog, type thing. Anyway, she said that she would have this conversation with it, or she had this conversation with it, rather, and it's sitting outside the window, I guess, and she didn't know what it was, but she never felt threatened by these things. Her husband, on the other hand, had always felt threatened by these things, because whether he actually seen one or not, I don't know. He never really went into detail about that. But he said that he's had, log chains and stuff like that just broken and, stuff thrown at him and stuff like that. He said he had a log chain tied up to a tree because they were pulling the frame back into position for a car or something like that. And he heard a bang that night. He went out there the next day, and the log chain was just pulled in half, and the car is pushed all the way to the other side of the property. The detail about that is that the vehicle is a 1950s or 1960s Chevy truck. It's a heavy truck. The tires are flat on it, and I believe where they were trying to pull the frame back to straighten it out at was the back right passenger side of her bed. I guess they had already had the bed off of it or not, and the tire was actually bent, so where the front of the tire was facing, where it would be facing lined up with the front tire, was facing in towards the driver's side cab. and something had pushed it all the way across the property, which is where that clearing, from the opening of the clearing on one side to the other is, it's, I want to say, a good 150 yards, and something had pushed it all the way up back over to the other tree line. And then he said that he's had baseball side rocks
Tell him
and
about
stuff
it
like
when
that.
your bears coming
He's
this
had
way.
his tops down.
Alright.
He's had stuff to spring come up missing on the
At least I slept most of the night.
He was found stuff that's come up missing on the property down. I think that's it as far as his stuff goes. My nanny told me about some stuff that happened when my mom, this is roughly about the same time that when I first given to R.C. Smith to my papa to get out the dogs. My nanny told me some stuff. She said that whatever it was making the noise outside would always go to the window where my mom was at, and she was at the bassinet. She was newborn, and it would always like tap on the glass right where she was at. My nanny would be able to open it, but they wouldn't even come there. She said it was like a ninja, if you will. One second he's there, the next second he's not. And then she said that as it continued to do so, my nanny would move my mom closer to the bed, and it would start tapping on the wall where she was at. And my nanny said that really creeped her out. It always happened after dusk, say 8:30 at night or so. And she said that it would continue to happen throughout the night, and this happened the entire time they lived there until they moved to Abilene. This thing would tap on the wall, window, wherever my mom was at. So I gathered the feeling that when that thing was looking in the window, that my Uncle Bob and my mom were over, it was looking at my mom. So it never showed like aggressive standpoint from what my nanny said. It was, the tap on the glass or the wall or whatever. I don't know if it was a male or female, I have no idea. But my nanny told me that, she would occasionally hear things in the woods. She would see stuff running in the woods in the later hours of the evening. She actually got to a point to where she wouldn't send the kids outside to get water or anything like that before. And if they fed the animals, they had to do it earlier in the evening rather than later. She said that she's had things given the doorknob as to see if they could open it or whatever. She said as far as it goes, she doesn't think that it knows how to open the door necessarily. Whether or not all of them are like that, I don't know. She said, but if they'd like to mess with the kids, they would be out in the yard or something, even during the daytime, and there would be rocks, like little pebbles thrown up in the woods towards them. It's left like little birds and twigs and rocks and stuff like that on the porch of their house with that wood. If I recall right, it would always leave like some type of food or treatment, like I said about the rocks and stuff like that, where they had a habit of eating like pecans and berries and stuff. There's not very many pecan trees where I grew up at, and where they have grown up at. There are some, but not a whole bunch. So, where it got the pecans from and how far it took from there to there, I have no idea. That said, my papa and I were at Little Cypress one night, and it's a whole, almost our entire family there actually. They go out and fish, right? We'll cook the fish and stand and eat and stuff. Christy goes to tell me that they were there one time and she heard something in the woods like stomping its foot go bucket, go front leg down and knock on the ground to kind of show his dominance. Like a blood charge or something. And she said she didn't know what it was, she didn't know where it was at, but on the other side of the creek, she could hear the same thing happen. And then all of a sudden she hears a massive splash in the creek, and it's just, I believe it's just her and my papa, I think my Bob in there at the time. She heard a splash, and then you could see ripples in the water. But then they heard, aggressive growls, and it sounded like something was biting something else, it sounded like it was fighting in the water. I don't know how far it was. It was enough a ways away that they couldn't see what it was. So they just assumed it was, white-tailed or whatever. There's another story that dates back to, I want to say the 1800s. I'm not sure exactly when it's happened. My papa called it the olden times or the wagon times. There was a family that used to live right next to Little Cypress where they built their house in a flood zone. And I guess their house got flooded or whatever, and they had to move out of there. So what happened was just before their house actually got flooded, there was an incident where something had gone into their pig stall and carried off all of the hogs. And then something had gotten into the chicken coop, and it touched the chickens, it took all of the eggs. And then something had gotten into their barn and took off with one of their horses, and then took off their goats and stuff like that. And this man had went in the woods after, the last animal came up missing. He was sick of it. He grabbed his gun and a couple of buddies, and they went off into the woods following the Little Cypress, where they believed whatever it was technically had went down into. Because it was, I guess, the only logical explanation as to what it was doing. They got down in there, and there was the horse's head had been ripped off its body. It was shoved onto a broken tree branch about 15 feet in the air on the rooftop. And they said it was fine. And the story was told and passed down from my family from their family. They said there was, I guess, a holly tree or something like that, not too far from there. And they found, a couple of broken eggs right there, so they kept following this stuff. And this brings us back to this mountain where, on the wildcat meadows. They followed it down back in there, and he said they followed it, the trail of where they think it may have went. He said they don't know for sure. If anybody's ever been down in the thick of the woods like that, they know that even in the middle of the day, it's still pretty dark and the woods can be so thick. It was, noon, and you could barely see a whole bunch, especially where they were at. There was light, yeah, but it was cloudy outside, rain and stuff. But the sun outside the trees and it showed green stuff. So they, when something steps down on the leaves, you can't really see the impression and stuff like that because the leaves cover it. But you can kind of see, like, somewhat of a trail, I guess. It's pretty. And they followed it to what I believe is the same mound. Whether it is or isn't, I don't know. But they found the horse outside, and they found bones and stuff of a hog, and they were all in a pile. And it had piled leaves and stuff on top of it. And there's like a mound, and there's a big hole. And this guy goes, I'm going to see what's in there. And he goes to go in there, and something snatches him and drags him down in there. He's never seen it. The other two guys, I guess, hightail it to get out of Dodge. That's as far as that story goes. I don't know too much more about that. If I recall correctly, that's what was said to me. So that family, had the flooded house, they moved or whatever. Now, my papa told me that these things have been there since the Quaker days, whatever he thought they were Quakers. But here's the thing. My nanny seems to think, from what she was telling me, that they've always been there. That it's something that's always been around. Obviously, they're old, or it's one family group or whatever. She said, but they only really create a problem towards the end of summer into, she thinks, like March or so of the next year. And then all of a sudden, they're not really around. I guess they follow the deer and they follow the food sources and stuff, which makes sense because if it's a large omnivorous animal, it has to follow a food source, especially if it's wild. Which brings me into some of the things that my nanny and papa really tried to explain to me growing up. They try to tell me that these things are real, they're out there, don't ever go in the woods by yourself, stuff like that. And the stories that they're telling me are not for me to be scared or to try to pull my leg or anything like that. It's just cautionary tales. The way my papa explained it is if you ever go to a creek and you have a fear of getting in the water, it's because throughout generations, that fear is a primal instinct inside of you because, at some point something dragged one of our people or one of our kind into the water to eat. That was instilled there. It's that primal knowledge. You have to understand and follow that. That's your gut feeling that you're, oh wait, maybe I need to think about this twice before I do it type of thing. He said that's whenever you're in the woods and you feel like you're being watched, you are being watched. If you're ever in the woods and you feel like you need to get out of that area, you need to get out of that area. Don't continue to travel down through where they're at and stuff like that. I'll have to remember the other stories at a later date.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of